Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. In reference to this past weekend's action, immediately after the fight, after having become a two-division champion, Harper II called out Natasha Jonas. That's the fight that she wants. She wants a rematch. We know that their initial meeting, their fight, ended in a controversial draw. Some people thought Terry did enough. Some people thought Natasha did enough. I myself had the fight scored a draw when I scored it live here on the channel. But that's not enough for some people. There needs to be a second fight. There needs to be a rematch. And now that they are once again campaigning at the same weight, now that they're both champions, it's only right that they meet for a second time. But the political boundary lines in the sport perhaps make that difficult, at least at this time.
Not too difficult. The fight can happen. It'll take some doing, but it can happen.
It can definitely happen. Don't forget that Alicia Baumgartner is a matchroom fighter the same way that Terry Harper is a matchroom fighter. But her next fight is happening on the Sky Sports and Boxer side of things against Michaela Mayer. So it's entirely possible that they do the fight.
If push comes to shove, I don't think that either Ben Shalom or Eddie Hearn would stand in the way of it.
I'm sure that both Team Harper and Team Jonas have their own reservations as far as where they would like the fight to take place, though ultimately it all boils down to who can make who the best offer. Can Matchroom make Natasha the best offer, or can Sky Sports and Boxer make Terry the best offer to cross over and have that unification match on their side of things? Currently, there are widespread rumors swirling that Natasha Jonas is set to fight in yet another unification match before this year is out.
Talked about it in my previous video. There seem to be ongoing negotiations for a Jonas versus DK fight.
I like Natasha Jonas' chances in that fight. I think she can win. And if she ends up beating Marie-Eve DK, adds a third alphabet title to her collection, this will be the second world champion she's defeated after having moved up in weight, taking that leap of faith all the way from 135?
From 135 all the way up to 154.
She beats another champion at this weight. She's a proverbial shoe-in to emerge on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, having beaten, potentially having beaten, two champions and collected 3 alphabet titles since having moved up. Something very similar applies to Terry Harper, but for different reasons. Terry is a two-division champion, having beaten 2 separate champions at 2 separate weights. She has a very credible argument to crack the list in the very near future.
She's not there yet, neither is Natasha, but it's conceivable.
It's conceivable that in the near future, both of them may end up being ranked on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list.
And the argument behind that is simple. Neither Natasha Jonas or Terry Harper are true junior middleweights. Neither of the two is a bona fide junior middleweight. They're both naturally smaller fighters that moved up in weight.
They are still able to compete and campaign as junior middleweights, not through physicality, not through physically imposing size or sheer power, not just...
It's their skills. It's their boxing.
You know, that's one aspect of the pound-for-pound conversation and the pound-for-pound concept that I think is lost on a lot of people. It's not about power. It's not necessarily about speed. It's not about physicality. It's about skills. Being a good enough boxer, tactically, strategically.
It's about skill more than anything else. Proving that you can stay in character at the highest levels of the sport.
I do think that aspect of the pound-for-pound concept, it seems to get lost on a lot of people. Natasha Jonas is not a true junior middleweight, but because she's such an excellent boxer, she's able to deal. She's able to hang against true junior middleweights because she's still a better boxer than they are, even if she's naturally smaller than they are.
And the same applies to Terry Harper.
Oh, I understand that Terry Harper carried the weight well upon ascending to the junior middleweight division, but don't forget, this is a fighter that used to campaign as low as 130 pounds. Henna Rankin couldn't have made that weight if you chopped off both of her legs.
Yeah, Terry moved up in weight, and she was able to carry the weight well, but don't forget, she moved up in weight. She is the naturally smaller fighter.
That being said, both Terry and Natasha cracking the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list is a distinct possibility.
Even more so if they end up fighting each other for a second time, and that is yet another distinct possibility.
Very exciting times in the junior middleweight division. Men's lightweight news. Leonard Ellerbe recently responded to Bob Arum's comments about a potential Shakur Stevenson versus Javonte Davis fight and how the Mayweather people would rather that not take place. They would rather that not happen. To that, Leonard Ellerbe said, Bob Arum, nice try. I get you're just promoting your guy, as you should. As you know, it's hard as hell building an attraction. Whatever we're doing over here is definitely working because Tank Davis is bigger than anyone on your entire top-ranked roster, not named Tyson Fury.
This is what Leonard resorts to whenever people talk about potential fights between Javonte and other fighters.
He gets to talking about how much money Javonte Davis makes and how well he's being promoted. This is what he normally does. Whenever you talk about Javonte fighting one of these young guys, this is what Leonard resorts to.
I keep telling you, he's not going to fight his contemporaries. He's not going to fight these other young guys that are out there.
A Twitter user that goes by the name KV Campbell said, Tank isn't ducking, but the Mayweather protection plan is. To which Leonard Ellerbe replied, Tank ain't ducking, no wreck. Every one of these elite fighters would love to be in his position. That plan you're referring to will afford him the opportunity to have generational wealth and have a great legacy simultaneously. By the way, what successful fighters do you work with?
Well, why don't you first address what legacy you're talking about? What legacy, Leonard? A legacy of picking up secondary titles?
Passing yourself off as a full-fledged champion, a full-fledged three-division champion, when all you're doing is picking up trinket titles and secondary titles instead of fighting for full ones, instead of fighting in legacy fights with your contemporaries.
So what legacy is Leonard Ellerbe referring to?
You know, Bob Arum, he didn't take a shot at Leonard, didn't take a shot at Javonte Davis. Not really, not much of a shot. He was just reiterating what we already knew, what Floyd already told us, that Javonte Davis is not going to be fighting Shakur Stevenson or Devin Haney, and those two guys, they should fight each other, because he's not going to fight them.
What are you supposed to make of that? What are you supposed to say?
How are you supposed to react to it? What are you supposed to say when Floyd says he's not going to fight those guys? He completely blows off the idea that Javonte Davis should and will fight them.
And the guys that Javonte is fighting aren't as accomplished as those guys. Devin's an undisputed champion.
What are we going to do? We're going to pretend that Isaac Cruz has the same kind of resume and the same kind of career accolades as Devin? We're going to pretend that Rolly Romero...
Devin's an undisputed champion. What's Rolly?
A fucking retard.
And look, nothing against Isaac Cruz, but your claim to fame ain't anybody that you beat. Your claim to fame ain't a scalp you collected. Your claim to fame is taking Javonte Davis the distance.
Javonte Davis has had a grand total of 3 fights in the lightweight division. 3 fights at 135 pounds. And
Gamboa, Romero, and Isaac Cruz.
Javonte Davis himself doesn't have much of a lightweight resume, let alone his opponents, let alone the guys that he's actually fought. Their claim to fame seems to be losing to him.
They themselves didn't beat nobody. Who the fuck did Isaac Cruz beat? Who did Rolly Romero beat?
You know, Devin Haney beat George Kambosos, who beat Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez beat Richard Comey and Vasyl Lomachenko. Vasyl Lomachenko beat Richard Comey and Masayoshi Nakatani and Jorge Linares.
Jorge Linares, who was beat by Devin Haney. Devin Haney, who beat Jojo Diaz.
Jojo Diaz, who beat Javier Fortuna. You see that all these other kids, they're getting it in. They're fighting. And they are fighting who's who fighters. Solid fighters. Whereas Javonte Davis's opponents, their claim to fame seems to be the fact that they fought him. Not even that they beat him.
Not even anyone that they beat, because they didn't beat anybody. Anyone of note at this weight.
This division that Shakur Stevenson is set to ascend to, he will be integrating himself into the lightweight division.
There are fight fans out there. They want to see Javonte Davis fight with that kind of fighter. And the most that Leonard can talk about is how well he's being promoted.
Not Shakur Stevenson, Javonte Davis, Leonard's fighter. He makes it seem like he doesn't need anybody based on how much money he's making. Yet none of these young guys, Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, none of them are starving because they can't get Javonte Davis in the ring. Do you know what Shakur Stevenson was set to make for this past weekend's fight with Robson Conceição?
More than Rolly made fighting Javonte.
$3 million. Do you think that Isaac Cruz got $3 million for fighting Javonte Davis? Do you think that Rolly Romero got $3 million? $3 million up front, $3 million guaranteed. Do you think he got that for fighting Javonte Davis? See, if you're a cash cow, you're supposed to be offering up life-altering money. The kind of money that you don't get on your own, can't get on your own. Whereas Shakur, Stevenson, Devin, Haney, they seem to be doing just fine.
A bona fide cash cow can get a fighter the kind of price, the kind of payday that fighter can't get on their own. Kind of like how Caleb Plant made $10 million from the Canelo Alvarez fight.
He wasn't making that kind of money before he fought Canelo Alvarez, and he's certainly not making it now, coming off a loss. You'd think they're going to give him $10 million for fighting Anthony Durrell? Of course not. But he got $10 million because he shared the ring with a bona fide cash cow, a box office draw.
And neither Isaac Cruz or Rolly Romero are making the kind of prices and the kind of paydays that Devin is making, that Shakur is making.
So what kind of cash cow is Javonte Davis really when he's not providing life-altering money for opponents that share the ring with him? In fact, there are a couple of fighters out there, they're getting at these millions of dollars all on their own without Javonte Davis.
They don't actually need him to get multi-million dollar purses, which is a big part of the reason I feel people should just stop talking about him. Stop mentioning him.
Floyd's not going to match him with your fighters. He already said that.
Floyd said that. So if anybody asks you about Javonte Davis, just tell them what Floyd said.
If you're Shakur Stevenson, if you're Devin Haney.
If anybody asks you about Javonte Davis, just tell them what Floyd said.
Tell them what Floyd said, because it came from him.
Not some content creator on YouTube connecting the dots. It came from Floyd himself. He doesn't want to put Javonte Davis in there with Devin or Shakur. He'd prefer they fight each other and leave Javonte alone.
That's what he said, so why the hell are we still talking about this? Why are reporters and members of the media still offering up these questions we already know the answers to?
Never got around to fighting Tevin Farmer. He never got around to fighting Vasyl Lomachenko. A brand new crop of fighters springs up, and he's not going to fight them either.
The truth is, Devin doesn't need Javonte Davis, and neither does Shakur Stevenson. He doesn't have any full-fledged alphabet titles for them to fight for anyway, and they seem to be making very good money all on their own.
If you're wondering, why did Floyd say that about Shakur and Devin? Why would he prefer they stay away from Javonte, but he didn't say that about Ryan?
Take it up with him, but stop asking these fighters and stop asking their promoter about a Javonte Davis fight when you already know how Floyd feels about it, and you already know what he said. What have you been living under, a rock?
Finally, the ongoing story at heavyweight in reference to the negotiations that are not ongoing between Team AJ, Team Fury. Frank Warren on Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua said Tyson's adamant. He's said enough is enough. Tyson has had enough of it. That's it. He's the champion, he's the guy that matters, and he makes the decision. That's his decision at the moment. We'll see how much he matters at the box office. We'll see how much he matters to the paying public when he tries to sell them a Out-Charr fight. At first, I thought it was Tyson Fury's intention to get Anthony in the ring at a very inopportune time for Anthony. But it's become quite clear that the offer that he made to Anthony Joshua was not made in good faith. It was never his intention to actually get him in the ring, and what this really was the old switcheroo, the old bait and switch. Baiting the boxing community at large into thinking that... Bait them into thinking that fight was going to happen when the whole time he knew that it wouldn't.
He knew that he was always going to fight Out-Charr, and he just needed a good enough excuse to choose that guy, to choose that fight.
Because Out-Charr is the last guy that deserves a title shot.
So, how would you justify giving him one? And this is how. You make it seem like you wanted to do the Joshua fight, and Joshua chickened out, so you ended up with this guy instead.
This guy can't go 10 minutes without using Anthony Joshua's name for something.
And now he is set to go head-to-head against him at the box office December. They're both set to return to action in the same month. Tyson Fury on the 3rd and Anthony on the 17th. And I promise you, whoever Anthony ends up fighting, it'll be someone better than Out-Charr.
That's what you can expect. You can expect in the buildup of Tyson Fury's next fight,
you can expect that Tyson Fury will name drop Anthony Joshua several times in order to try to sell it. You can expect that Out-Charr will fall in line and follow suit. Do the exact same thing. You can expect that, and you can expect that whoever Anthony ends up fighting it will be someone better than Manuel Charr.
These are schoolyard tactics, and you know what? It's not going to work. It's not going to fly, because no matter what you say about Anthony,
that won't make Manuel Charr a box office fight. That won't make him an intriguing and attractive dance partner to the paying public, to the customers who feel jilted by Tyson Fury, a good number of them.
Why is a guy so determined to sell everybody a Manuel Charr fight?
Well, he needed an easy one. He needed a keep busy fight, a tune-up fight, but it's hard to market a tune-up fight as a box office fight, as being pay-per-view worthy. And the reason he's on pay-per-view, obviously, is because he wants to make a lot of money. He's made a lot of money in the past, and he wants to keep making a lot of money. But
before you were fighting Deontay Wilder, before you were fighting Dillian White, now those fights were box office.
This one isn't. This fight's a tough sell.
I don't know what Frank Warren is going to pay this guy for this fight.
I really don't know. Surely it's not going to be in the neighborhood of $30 million like what he got for Deontay Wilder in their last two fights. Surely it's not going to be $30 million like what he got for Dillian White earlier this year. This fight, it doesn't have the same commercial value that those fights did.
And that's what this was really all about. Finding an angle to sell a fight that nobody wants so he can still make a lot of money.
In the end, I really don't think this bait and switch worked. I don't think this ruse convinced people that he was serious about fighting Anthony. If anything, it's the opposite. Now more people realize he was never serious about fighting that guy.
Should meet on Monday. Both teams are supposed to iron out the particulars to get the fight over the line, and that's when you decide to pull the plug.
I don't think he was expecting Anthony to accept his offer. That's the gist of it. And when he did, that put Fury in a very strange place.
Is this really happening?
He was expecting Anthony to reject his offer so he could then lambast him publicly and use that as the avenue of opportunity to sell this fight. But when Anthony accepted the offer, accepted the 60-40 proposed split, and December 3rd as a fight date,
he wasn't expecting that. Anthony called his bluff, and Tyson Fury, in so many words, folded.
Tyson didn't think, when he made that offer, he didn't think it would get that far to where both Team Queensberry and Team Matchroom were working together to deliver that fight. He didn't think it would get that far, didn't think that would happen.
This guy loves to waste people's time, man.
Hindsight being 2020, that's what all of this was. A veiled attempt to sell people a fight that nobody wants.